You are listening to Hajduk Talks, the official podcast of the AYF West. I'm Haik Minasyan, and we're just a couple of Armenians talking in the world.
A couple of Armenians talking in the world.
So, welcome, G. If I can call you G, is that okay?
Yeah, it's better.
I understand that's what you go by, yes?
Yeah.
G, you're a travel blogger, you're a photographer, you've been living in Armenia for about 2 years, is that right?
Since August 2020. I think the day after they opened the border again after COVID.
It'll be 2 years in a few months or something. That's pretty
couple of months, yeah.
Pretty cool. I'm jealous, and I'm more jealous of the fact that you've traveled to Western Armenia like 4 times. Is that right?
I think in total maybe 4 or 5 times, I'd say, all over the country, really.
I've been to Istanbul because my family's from there, but I've not gone to Western Armenia. I've been saving that trip for when it's right or when I have the time, so I'm extremely jealous. But what does that say, right? Like, I'm Armenian, I haven't been there. You have.
To be fair, there's a lot of Armenians that I've met in Armenia who've never been there.
Yeah, that's a thing. And granted, like, you know, there's Western Armenians and Eastern Armenians, and but at the same time, a lot of the Armenians in Armenia have Western Armenian roots, let's say, and we will get more into, like, why do you think maybe more people aren't going, but before we get into that, I did want to ask you, you know, being non-Armenian, and your journey to Armenia, like, how did you find out about Armenia? How did you first get out there?
You have to go back years. I think it was, I kind of knew about the world of Armenia. I knew about the Caucasus. I just never been there, never went there until I think 2015. I was in Aintab, Gaziantep, whatever they want to call it these days.
Yeah.
In Turkey. So when I was there, like I said, I knew about Armenian things. I just didn't know it to the extent I know it now, which is still not enough. But as I was in Antep, I had some friends there. I was there 3-4 times. I've been there. I went for the kebabs. They're meant to have the best food out there. And as he took me around, he took me to a neighborhood called Bey Mahallesi, I think the name was. Loads of mansions, beautiful mansions down small corridors and alleys, and it just looked like something magical. And a lot of cafes and hotels there, basically. Took me to one place, I think it was called Cafe Baghdad, I think it was called. Sat down, had some beautiful tea, and then he told me this was an Armenian mansion. And I was like, Armenian mansion? Oh, that's interesting. Took me to another part of the building, which they never renovated. It's left as it was when an Armenian family was living there. Decor, some writing inside, all this kind of stuff is still there.
So
I can see the writing.
So your first exposure to, like, or your interest in Armenia was in Western Armenia, kind of, right?
Yeah. So it still wasn't, after he showed me the house, I still wasn't that interested.
Yeah.
And like, then as I thought, wow, it's a nice house. Yeah, maybe Armenians lived here, they left. I didn't know the full deal, basically. As I started walking around Antep, I saw an Armenian church. Now, I think it's called Maryam Anna Church or St. Miriam's or something like this. It's now a mosque. Showed me that, and I was like, okay, it's a bit weird. But Hagia Sophia was a church turned to a mosque. Still nothing weird going on.
Right.
Walked a bit more, saw 2 or 3 more churches that were Armenian. And I was like, well, so where are the Armenians? They got all these churches. They got this neighborhood, Bey Mahallesi, full of mansions. They must have had money. Where are they? That's when the penny dropped, and I was like, wait a minute, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
Then I started looking deeper into the whole situation and what's going on, what happened. And
do you know the researcher Umit Kurt? He's a He has a very similar story. He's actually like a local from Gaziantep, and he has a similar story where he's in a cafe, and it might be even the same cafe where he discovered the owners were Armenian, and he wrote an entire book. And we might actually interview him on this show as well, which would be great.
I've read segments of his work, actually. I remember he released something recently on Twitter.
Yeah, he came
maybe
out
last year or something, and it was quite interesting to read. But I guess it was a similar experience. I was just there to see like Byzantine things,
Yeah.
a lot of like Roman type things around there. And then after a while, I was like, wait, there's all these Armenian things. There's no Armenians. Let me look into it.
Well,
And there you go.
who was taking you around and like giving you this tour of?
No
Yeah.
one. So basically, in these early times I went, and even now, I take my friends who are Turkish. They don't even know.
Yeah.
I'm taking them around. They're like, "Oh, Gerdip, you've been to Mardin before? I've never been. Can you show me around?" And I end up meeting my friends there who are of a Turkish background. A couple of them showing them around, you know. So I think I've become like an official tour guide in some sense. I never have been to a place where I've asked someone like, "Can you be a guide?" Like I hate having a guide with me or someone telling me stuff. I just do my own research. I go out there. I just walk around.
No, I totally get that. I whenever I travel, wherever I go, I like to first off like go somewhere where I know locals, so I have more of like a locals experience. But that's impressive that you're going to a place you've never been to and kind of doing it on your own. But that says something that, you know, the locals don't really have they like maybe the local villagers might know what it is, but they're not in a professional way where they can take you around and really show you as like a tour guide. I know
very rarely I've seen that. Very rarely where a local will just kind of join you and give you some information. But
well, I know in Armenia they have some Western Armenia tours, and so at one point were you traveling from Western Armenia to Turkey to go see the sites, or were you just flying into Turkey?
no, normally I think usually I'd just fly to Istanbul and just get a super long bus all the way across. Sometimes a flight. I think one time, this is again, I think 2016, 2015, I went to, I think I flew into Azerbaijan.
Wait, you flew?
I was there for a week, then I went to Georgia, then I went to Armenia, then I went to Artsakh, then I went up to Turkey. It's a big road trip I did many years ago, 2016, I think it was.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, you definitely can't do it the other way around where you go to Armenia and then Azerbaijan. Yeah. But, I mean, I'm glad you're able to go. And I'll say, like, you know, Armenians are nervous. They're kind of nervous about going back to Turkey. You know, we hear things. Our last memories of the place were not good. And they still aren't, let's say. So, I mean, what would you say to the Armenian who's kind of intimidated about going back? Do you think they could do it?
I think... I mean, I can't really.
Right.
I mean, I'm not Armenian, you know, but I can just give my opinion as someone who's not.
Yeah.
I never came across any issues, and I've been there with Armenians as well. So I was with one of my friends. We were in Akdamar. We're going to Akdamar Island to see the beautiful church there. And she was with me, and she's Armenian, and the bus was full of, the boat was full of mainly Kurdish people. And we just, because we were speaking English, they were curious, oh, who are these guys speaking English? Started talking. I think the guy was called Asef. He was a teacher, Kurdish teacher in Van. And as soon as he found out that my friend was Armenian, first thing he said was, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then my friend was like, well, you don't need to be really sorry because you didn't do anything, you know, but he's like, look, I'm very sorry about what happened. I'm glad you're coming to visit. And so, I mean, most of the things I'm going to say are positive. I'm sure negative things do happen out there, but I haven't come across anything personally or seen anything, but I've heard stories.
No, that's good to hear. But what would, like, so the overall attitude of the locals, let's say
even when I'm asking, like Ermeni Kilise or whatever, like is there a church here? Yeah, is there a church here? They didn't say anything bad, like, oh, Armenian this, Armenian that. They're like, oh, yes, there's a church over here. They used to live here. They did this, they did that. Like, as in they had this many schools. They were merchants. They were doing that. Like, I'd hardly come across anything. The only negative things I came across 2 times, but that was to anyone non-Muslim.
Yeah.
Not like this is a place of the Kufar.
Yeah.
You know, like pointing to an old church, but that's just, they're saying it to anyone. When they found out I wasn't even following an Abrahamic religion, I was automatically a Kufar anyway. So, so for them, it's like, for the people that the 2 occasions where something negative happened, it wasn't even negative. It was just banter. Some old man, some young child, they don't really understand anything. They're like, anyone who doesn't believe in Islam is a kufar.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it wasn't directly to Armenians, but I guess it's directly to anyone who's not Muslim.
Also, would you say like a solid pro tip at least is like go with someone who speaks the local language, you know? Would that help?
Yeah, that definitely opens doors. If you have a friend who speaks Turkish and they're in the region, then yeah.
I mean, would it make a difference if the person is an actual Turkish citizen, or like if you just know the language, it should work out? You think, or is there any passports
shouldn't make a difference?
Any passports that make it easier to get around or not get too questioned the whole time? I don't know.
They hardly check my passports, to be fair, because I went all over Western Armenia and only at the roadblocks, because of this issue that they say that they have with the Kurds in the region. They've set up loads of roadblocks in certain areas, certain towns, where they just glance at your passport. As soon as they see you're foreign, they just let you go through.
Yeah. All right. Word. I mean, that's good to know. And I mean, I do want to go. I have had a handful of good friends who have done the travel out there.
But the funny thing is, everywhere you go, like for example, I went to Kars. Okay, there was no Armenians there. But then when I went down to Van, I met some Armenians. When I went to Mardin, met some Armenians. When I went to Elazig and Diyarbakir, I met some Armenians. I wouldn't say they were the hidden ones. They were also fully Armenian, but they spoke Turkish. Some of them forgot the Armenian language, but they didn't forget their roots. They still go to the church and things like that.
They were Armenians from like Istanbul, you think, or
no? These guys, the ones from there, man. The ones I met in Elazig, they've always been there. These two twins, these two brothers.
Well, my family is Harpertsi. It's Elazig is Harpert. That's actually my family.
I went there. I went to Harpert as well, man.
I would love to go. I'm so jealous.
But these two brothers, they own a car garage. It's family business. Their father before them, their granddad had this kind of car business.
Well, I saw recently in Malatya that they just recently renovated the church there. I know in Diyarbakir they've started to slowly try to reorganize a community of Armenians, whether it's hidden Armenians and then not so hidden Armenians. I feel like every time I see the news, like there's some progress and then there's a setback, then there's some progress and a setback.
One step forward, two steps back every time. Like the Armenians in Elazig, it's only about 20.
Yeah.
Maximum only about 20, but they don't have their own church. They go to, I mean, obviously there were plenty of churches there in the past, just not anymore. But they use the Syriac church. There's about 50 Syriac families and I think 15, 20 Armenian families. And that community is kind of meshed together in Elazig, basically.
Well, that whole southern part of Western Armenia, let's say Turkey, Eastern Anatolia, was very intermixed with Assyrians and Syriacs and Armenians. I actually recently found out that my Harpert family, like my grandmother's grandmother was an Assyrian, which is really cool. I got really happy about that when my grandma told me. But
that's interesting.
But we have a lot of Armenian friends who have Assyrian blood, and it's especially for those parts of it's because like we're the most similar, and if we can't go to our own church, we'll go to each other's churches.
Exactly.
Vice versa. Yep. Well, so okay, you went to Diyarbakir, you've been to Mardin, you've been to Antep,
Kars. I went to Erzincan, Erzurum,
everywhere,
Bitlis, all around Van, the whole area there, and then a lot of other like smaller places that people probably never heard of, like Kilatashi, aka Bagaran, ancient Bagaran. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I went there. That's where something really interesting happened. Yeah, I met a Kurdish boy.
I read your article on EVN. It was amazing. So please tell us. I want to hear.
So me and my Turkish friend were traveling together for a couple of weeks, just road tripping in that part of the world. And he really wanted to go there. I had already been there like 2 years before. So we went there, I think there's one church, St. Shushanik, which is literally in Armenia, but you're closer to it when you're in Turkey, because on the Armenian side, you need Russian permission, and it's a ball ache just to get there to see it. So for me, it's better. I applied. I got permission. I went to the Russian soldiers. They said no.
Yeah.
So I was like, what? I even have all the paperwork. This was in Armenia. So I had to go, obviously, around. Turkish side, went to Kilatashi, and I was right next to it on the other side. So I'm like, this is mad. Like, come on, this is a beautiful Armenian church. Why can't Armenians see it?
Yeah, I didn't know about that. That's crazy.
So, it's right there. And met some characters in the village, and one of them man, I forgot his name, but it's in the article. He said this many years ago, his chickens ran across the river, Akurian, up to where the church is, and he had to literally cross the border into Armenia to grab his chickens and bring them back. It was quite funny.
Well, it's right there. Even Ani, like you can see the ancient city of Ani from the Armenian side of the border.
Yeah, but the crazy thing is you have to go to Kharkiv village, and again, you need permission from the Russians, which is a pain in the ass. Yeah. Which is, I mean, why? That's why I don't understand why. That border is dead. On the Turkish side, there's nothing. All they have is a camera system set up. There's no soldiers. There's nothing there on the Turkish side. They've left it to cameras.
You know what my fear was?
As long as you don't... Yeah, as long as you don't cross the border, there's no problem.
When I was like 11 years old, my first time in Armenia, like our fear was like, oh, if you walk too close, like they'll snipe at you or something, they'll shoot you or something.
Maybe in those times, yes, because I heard of stories. But in the last 5 years, in the times I've been there, and I've been only 4 times, they've taken away all the soldiers from that region. They're in the barracks, which are not far, but the border itself. All their posts are empty. They put a new camera system there, and they just let the cameras do the job.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Or they just sit in the barracks and drink chai or whatever they do.
That's interesting. Well, so you saw Bagaran, which is one of our ancient capitals. You saw Ani, which is one of our ancient capitals.
So in Bagaran, when I was there, they told us to go up to this little kind of a hill where there's like I said, an old outpost, Turkish outpost, completely empty, dead. And as we were going up there, met a couple of I don't know, herders, like moving cattle around, shepherds, kids, like 4 or 5 of them. And then I told one of them, hey, we're looking for a spring, su or something. I said in water, like in Turkish, like this is a religious site, like a holy spring. Because that's what the old man, Kurdish man in the village said, hey, there's a holy Armenian spring up there on the hill somewhere. There's a cross there. So we went there, we found it. And as we were looking at it, the kid, I've got a picture in the article. The kid was kind of pointed out to. I go, hey, look, it's Armenian writing, and he kind of looked down at the cross and whatever. And then I go, hey, kid, what's your name? And then he's like, Ararat. Yeah. And I was like, asked him again. I go, wait, what's your name, mate? And he's like, Ararat. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like this kid. Then I was like, do you know what your name means? He goes, no.
Yeah, not ugly or
and
whatever.
Then at that point, yeah. So at that point, I was like, should I tell this guy the truth? Like, I don't want to shatter his world. He's only about 10 years old,
He might not mean anything to him, or he might not understand too much.
Yeah. We told him he's named after a mountain, and you couldn't really see it from there. And we're like, that big mountain down there, that's the name. We call it Ararat, but in Turkish it's Agridag. Yeah. I didn't really say too much that it's Armenian or whatever. I think he's going to figure that out. Yeah. But I'm sure his parents obviously must know something, their grandparents or something.
That is interesting. No, that because I haven't heard that before, and it's obviously very. It's also like the international term for the mountain, but it's it's an Armenian.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the mountain to Turks doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. And it's
just a big mountain. That's all it is to them.
Well, other than a reason to like complain to us about having it on like Armenia's coat of arms or something.
Yeah. I've seen some articles about that. It's a bit nuts.
But do you know the joke that like the response that some Armenian gave was, well, you have the moon on your flag. You don't own the moon, do you? It's such a good one.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So, hey, I would love to go to Bagaran because it's also one of those like more unknown historical capitals of Armenia.
Like literally, hardly anyone goes there, and there's a lot of Armenian things. There's remnants of I think 2 churches, 3 that we saw. One of them was actually quite important. I think it was Saint Thomas, was it? Was it Thomas? I'm getting the name wrong. Might have been. It was a really big structure. There's a black and white picture of it that still exists. Nothing's there now, but other than some rubble. But there's a newer 19th century church at the top of a kind of a hill as well that you can see on the Turkish side.
Well, I am curious about the conditions. I also wanted to talk to you today because one, I've been following your work for a year or so, and I love the photography, and I loved seeing the most up-to-date photos of what's over there, like I've seen plenty of photos, but I'm like, he just went there last year. This is what the most recent look is. What was the conditions of a lot of the places you went? And also if you've gone to a place more than once, did you see a difference from the first and second time?
Yes, there's a place called Kozlucha, I think it's called. I never know how to pronounce these things properly, but it's just before Ani. So just before you get to the village where Ani is, it's a village called Kozlucha, I believe.
Okay.
And I went there in 2018. There's a monastery there called Bagnayer Monastery, I believe. And then there was a small chapel next to it. When I went there, it was just full of farming equipment, haystacks, all kinds of garbage everywhere. And you couldn't really get on the insides and see anything properly. But now when I went last year, literally like the whole place has been cleaned out. And then some old man came. We asked him, I go, hey, look, when I came a few years ago, there was all this equipment, all hay inside the small chapel and all this kind of stuff. He's like, oh, the Gendarmerie told us that we have to clear out all these special places. We're not allowed to keep anything inside these buildings anymore. So from that conversation, it looks as though the Gendarmerie who control that region, I don't know if it's a whole state thing, maybe it's just that region, they've been told, look, you're going to keep this shit clean. Don't put anything in there. And
no, that's awesome.
They've abided by it.
No, that's great. I mean, because I don't always get too mad to think that, like, okay, a villager, a poor villager is kind of using these spaces for this and that. It's my more concern is when it's on a state level of, like, letting these places get destroyed or degrade to a point. But that's great to hear. And I mean, do you think it's because the government is kind of trying to turn those sites into more of like a touristy kind of experience?
I think that they might be trying to add it as part of like an Ani experience, because Ani is UNESCO and this is literally like 15 minutes before Ani. So maybe there is something going on there. Even in Kilatashi, which is maybe about 40 minutes north drive from Ani, there was, from what the locals told us, some people came and they're going to start excavating that area. So it looks like there's something happening around there. Not sure what exactly, but...
I mean, that's awesome. Like, a dream of mine would have been to be an archaeologist and go to Western Armenia and do all that. But my only worry with that is, like, they're going to dig this stuff up, keep what they want, not keep what they want, and then call it whatever they want. Hopefully, it's done by independent groups and, it's done fairly. Yeah,
normally it's, from what I heard, it might be NGOs, because I know there's some NGOs working at Ani. I think one of them actually is Armenian.
That's okay. That
one of my friends, Turkish Armenian.
Yeah.
So one of my friends, she's Turkish Armenian. I think her uncle, she said, is actually working on site there.
Oh, that makes me feel better.
In Ani,
at least. No, so.
But the funny thing is, like, if they ever, I mean, not funny, but the good thing should be in the future, if ever this thing happens where the border is
opened,
kind of less awkward than it is now. There's also 6 other places that can be visited that you probably, I don't know if you know about Horomos.
Maybe not.
Horomos Monastery.
Oh, Horomos in Artsakh? No, there's one in Artsakh too.
No. This one is crazy place. Like, literally, if you look at Ani, you look north and right on the Akurian, but on the Turkish side, you can see it from Haykadzor village in Armenia.
Okay.
The river kind of bends past there, and you can kind of see the church from there, but there's a massive monastery complex. I think one of your kings was buried there.
Well,
one of the Bagratuni kings was buried there. And there's a big monastery, 4 big structures, and the dome inside is full of these beautiful kachkars and faces of priests, and it's an amazing place, but you can't go there. Because it's like in a military zone.
Well, I've seen something like that on the Armenian side of the border. That's not what you're talking about, right? It's on the Turkish side border.
No. On the Armenian side, you've got 3 small churches. You've got Haykadzor Church. There's Artsavagan Church. I can never get the name right. And then you got the Saint Sheshunik, the Bagaran Church. So there's these 3 that are kind of stuck in this Russian-controlled border area where you need permission. They're the 3 I tried to visit from the Armenian side. But on the Turkish side, there's something called a Shepherd's Church north of Ani, small kind of chapel. Yeah. But again, right on the Akurian, and the Turks say it's in a military zone. North to that, you've got Taylor Church and Horomos Monastery. There's about 6 structures just in that one vicinity, but in a military zone. So this is my story. So I've been trying to go there for years, and they had Gendarmerie there, right? So they just stop you, like, hey, what are you doing? Yeah. So me and my mate, we drove there last year down this really awful fucking dirt track road. We've got like a really crap Peugeot, And it's not made for these roads, man. I'm telling you, we could get stuck at any point. We're driving 15, 20 minutes. I'm trying my best to be like Lewis Hamilton, trying to get past the holes. As we're driving, I'm so fixated on Horomos. We pass a massive catch car on the side of the road, huge one, like 6 foot. And I was so like just focusing on getting to Horomos, I didn't even stop to take a picture of that. I was like, you know what, on the way out, we'll take a picture. We're driving. There's a gate, Armenian gate. It used to be, I think, this big monumental gate as you enter Horomos. We went past that, took a couple of pictures of that, stopped the car, didn't go any further. And as I looked, I'll send you the pictures later. As I looked, you see like it's kind of down the river, Horomos Monastery, 2 other big churches next to it, and this beautiful flat plain and the river just running through them. And it's just right there, man. And as we were doing that, some men were installing, local villagers were installing the new camera system I was telling you about. So my friend was like, oh, maybe we should ask them, see if we can go down there. I'm like, let's not ask no one. We just walk. And if they come, they come. You know, so we're about to walk. And then the men stopped and looking at us. They were quite high up on this tower looking. So my friend was like, oh, okay, maybe we should go and speak to them. I'm like, okay. As we were walking, I could see Horomos. I could just see it. I didn't want to pull my phone out. Went to the guys. They're like, hey, we're the villagers. We're fixing the new system. You shouldn't be here. You need permission. You can go with permission. It just takes a while to get it. Yeah. So, I mean, I barely took one picture. I saw it with my eyes, and I'm like, I am planning to go back because I've got a friend in Kars, Kurdish guy who has connections who can maybe get me in there. So I am planning to go back. And if any Armenian listening has never heard about it, you should know about this place.
No, 100%. And I was going to ask you what your plans were if you're going to be going back. What is that going to be in 2022? You think?
I think it's definitely going to be this year. I'm going to go somehow to Kars, and then I'm going to hop on a car with my mate. We're just going to drive down. It's unmanned now. Like I told you, the nearest post is quite far. It will take them longer to get to me than it will take me to get down. I'll be down in 10 minutes from the point where the car can stop. It take me half an hour to get down, take pictures, leave. The patrolmen, it will take them maybe 45 minutes to get to me. If they see me on the camera, that is. Well, so I will try it.
I know you wrote an article. I've been following again your footage, and I will wanna see some of the things you're talking about, and we'll share it with our followers, our listeners. But do you have plans, additional plans on what to do with all this footage and all this documentation that you have? Still TBD.
I set up Twitter in 2008, and I just got on it like last year. Yeah. So it's been a long time. So I thought, you know what? I've got all this material, all this knowledge and stories I've heard. Let me just start posting it. So I have started posting everything on there, obviously on my Instagram. People have came to me and said, oh, you should do like an exhibition. I would do it, but I'm just too lazy. For example, the article you wrote, that's been a year in the making. And I just did it like a few months ago. So like, yeah,
I'm sure you
that's
could
the point where
I'm sure you could do like 5 or 10 more articles based on all your experiences.
And stuff. I could do loads. I mean, I could, if someone wants to take my photos and do something with them, go ahead. I'm not copywriting anything. If Armenians want to do something with it, they can take them for free. It's no problem for me.
Well, from my perspective, I'm just happy. I'm like, hey, look, someone's documenting it. Someone's like sharing it with the world. That's obviously like, it makes me very happy. And I'm like, okay, good enough. But I would definitely love to see something you create one day, whether it's an exhibition or like a photo book or whatever it is. Or even one day you're like, hey, I've been to all these places and I'm going to bring a camera crew with me one day and like do a little who knows, a film or something.
Yeah, I mean, like I tried video blogging and I just didn't like my face at all. I still don't like my face. I tried it. I made a few videos like 5 years ago and I was like, okay, this is not me. I can't do this. I'm just going to stick to taking pictures. And then even with exhibitions, like I don't like being
center of attention.
Yeah. I want people coming up to me, asking me questions. So that's why I told my friends, I go, look, if you guys want to take my stuff, you guys do something with it. All good. Put my name on it if you want, but I want to come as a guest. I don't want people to know who I am. I don't want attention, basically.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like when I first started doing this podcast with our organization, I didn't like it either. But okay, so it sounds like you need someone to collab with, someone to be like a partner in terms of like.
If someone wants to do 99% of the work, and I just turn up for a free glass of wine, then yeah.
You give them the material, and then they do what they gotta do. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds good.
I've got another thing to tell you, by the way. So You know, in Bagaran, there's another church there called Marin Cathedral. Have you heard of that?
No. It's crazy.
Marin, or Mren Cathedral. So again, this was in a military zone. It's not as close to the border as the other ones I've mentioned. It's a 7th century church, Armenian church. Beautiful.
I'm looking it up right now. Cathedral.
You're looking at the pictures,
yeah, I see it. It's still.
So I went there a few years ago, and there's no easy way to get there because the roads are a bit crap. It's next to this. Funny enough, it's next to a village called Karabakh.
Yeah, I see that here.
Yeah. And the people in the village are very nice, by the way, and they're like, yeah, the Armenian church is over there.
Is it still?
But they're like, watch out.
Is it still like the foundation is still there? The
one side is collapsed. I think World Monuments Fund were trying to do something to put some beams up to protect it, but that was in 2011, and I think the government were like, nah, as in Turkish government.
Yeah.
And WMF, World Monuments Fund, they do a lot of good stuff, so I'm wondering like why there was a break in communication there.
Is there an incentive?
And then I was going through my head like, why? Because it's kind of weird, because this WMF, they use their own money, NGO or whatever. They go out, they did go out at one point, and they documented the whole building. They took like sonar images and all kinds of stuff, and they've got a whole article about it on their website. You can read about the church. But then I read that one of the main people of WMF, a few years later, they weren't allowed back. And now it's completely, when I went last year, like you can't even get there because the watchtower, the barracks is very close by. And they have the camera system, like I mentioned. If you're seen there, they will just come out and be like, why are you here? You need permission again, which can be a little tricky. But I think if you're a local, you can do it. Because some of my Turkish friends who are doing architecture as a thesis or whatever, they've managed to go to Hormuz, the place I told you about, and here.
Interesting.
With permission, with soldiers with them. But my story is in 2017, I went there illegally in Marin, right? And I had 10 minutes there. I walked for like an hour with my Cambodian friend. He had no idea what I was bringing him into. I told him it's safe. Don't worry, nothing's going to happen here. So I took him there. We walked, man, for a while. If you look at the satellite imagery of that church, you can see that there's extensive ruins all around. There's a whole village built around that cathedral, basically. So excavations, I'm sure you'll find crazy shit. And if you look at the date of the church, I think it's sometime in the 7th century, which means like Turks weren't even nowhere near the region. I think they weren't even Islamic. They probably still were like doing their shaman religions or whatever.
Or whatever, yeah.
Yeah. And Prophet Muhammad probably just died or was still preaching. Mm-hmm. So it was at that time where it was like Sassanids versus Byzantines, Armenian vassals in the middle, that kind of thing. So old. That's probably like one of the special churches I've ever seen in my life, because there's a carving on the front, and it's got one of the Byzantine rulers carved on the front. I think it's Augustus. I always forget the name, but one of them is barely you can make him out. He's on a horse. So it's kind of the Armenians who are ruling in that region. They were kind of backed up by the Byzantine Empire, whereas one half of the Armenian population lived further away. They were with the Sassanids.
Classic.
So it was interesting times when this church was built. But so anyway, I got there. I was only there for 10 minutes, took a couple of pictures, walked in. Inside was like a bomb blew it up, grave diggers everywhere, massive holes. You can see the bottom of the structures, crazy inside. One half of the churches fell down. Most of the structure is still there. The writing you can still make out, frescoes of Jesus you can still make out here and there. And then after about 10 minutes, just walking around, taking a couple of pictures, I kind of felt something in my stomach. I was like, something feels weird here. I look behind me, this big military truck with dust blowing up, just bombing down, coming towards us. My friend is shitting bricks. I'm like, listen, just don't say anything. Don't even speak. Let me talk to him. And then they jump out and they're like, dikkat, whatever, like warning. I thought he said dickhead. And I was like, shit. How do they know English? No, they said dikkat. And I put my hands up because they had their guns out and shit. And I was like, okay, this is kind of weird. I was like, Yabanji, Hayır Dushman. Yeah. And then I was like, Suryani Kilese. I was like, this is a Syrian church. Yeah. I was like, in my head, I was like, okay, who would they hate the most? Armenians, followed by Greeks, and I think Syrians third, right? So I was like, yes, Syrian church, mate. Like, come on. Like, just trying to play dumb, And then after a few minutes, they're like, oh, I saw my British passport, Cambodian passport, that kind of shit. They're like, okay, these guys, there's nothing weird going on here. We're still going to take you back to the barracks.
Yeah.
Went to the barracks, sat down in a tent, and it was like I felt like I was in a Rambo movie.
Yeah.
I sat in a tent, this guy with a hat. He wanted to see our passports again, so I was like, "Here you go." And then he looked at my passport, and the first thing he said was Leicester City Football Club, and I was like, Leicester City Football Club. Then he was like Jamie Vardy, and I was like Jamie. He started naming like 6 football players from my home city, basically, because I think a year or two before that we won the championship title, like a 1 in a million in English football.
Remember, yeah. It was a big
2016 that was, and I was there in 2017. So he just started naming football players. I started naming them back. And then he's like, Ikichai Varma. I was like, I think he said, do you want 2 teas or whatever? And I was like, yeah, cool. Sitting there for 15, 20 minutes. He bought some food, had tea, talking about football, talking about daily life, talking about his kids and wife. And I was like, these guys are cool, man. They're not going to, nothing really. I think they thought we were grave diggers or doing some weird shit. I don't know what, man. But I have seen in the region, though, they are putting a stop to grave diggers.
That's good.
They come heavily down on grave diggers, like gold diggers, not grave diggers. Gold diggers.
To clarify,
or treasure hunters, the real term, I guess.
No, dude, that's a whole thing out there. I actually I have been on a Facebook page of a bunch of like treasure hunters in Turkey where they share notes. They'll like post photos of like, what does this symbol mean? It's very weird. They're treating it like it's an Indiana Jones kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. By the way, I infiltrated a group on Telegram, and I met someone in Van. By the way, so I was playing a role as a buyer, basically.
You just
take you around. What do you have?
Yeah, or like this.
Yeah. He was asking me because we were somewhere, and he just came out of nowhere. I think not in Chatak. There's another region we went to. Can't remember where it was now, but somewhere in that region. We went somewhere and some guy came out. It was near Ani, actually. It was close to Ani. In this Kozluka village I told you about. Another guy came out later. First an old man came and then this other guy came out. And he's like, oh, so you're looking for
gold.
Treasure here, huh? Gold. I was like, not really, man. We're just here taking pictures and this. He's like, I found something. I don't know if it's worth money. Do you want to buy it off me? And I was like, what is it? He showed me a couple of pictures. It wasn't much, man. You can barely make out writing on a small piece of rock. And then he said to me, he goes, look, I heard there's a lot of gold up by the mountains. There's a fountain with some Armenian writing. I heard they buried a lot of gold there. I've got some equipment. Let's go together tomorrow. Come with me. Let's go and find the gold. And I was like, you know what? We've got travel plans. I'm busy, but I will take you up on your offer one day. Give me your number and whatever. Took his number. A few days later, he started messaging me, showing me things, telling me about his crew, his contacts, what he's trying to do. And I was kind of infiltrating this place, I was like, what? But from what I've been told, when we were further up near Trabzon, we were coming down over the mountains, Ardahan somewhere, and we were driving at night in the middle of nowhere to look at a church. Some local villagers came out angry, like, hey, there's no treasure hunters here, get out. Like, if you're a treasure hunter, we're going to call the police. We're like, whoa, we're just taking pictures, man. Look, I'm British. My friend, he's from somewhere else or whatever, Like, they were really deep on it, man.
That's good. I mean,
I think the penalties are quite harsh as well.
Good, no.
Because someone told us a story that one guy, he got caught
trying
to find some gold in a Georgian Armenian church or something. And literally he had to sell his cattle, sell his house just to pay the bills. His wife left him, all kinds of shit, man. Like, it's quite harsh.
You tell that story to all the locals, they'll stop. I mean...
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's really good to hear. I mean, yeah, it's something that we're, like, aware of. And it's funny that it's almost become, like, mythical, like, understandings of what might be there at this point. I had a friend who went back to Western Armenia, and they were, like... Because an Armenian came back to the village, they all brought out this copper that they had found, and thinking that like when an Armenian comes back, it'll turn back to gold or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, so when you're going to these sites, what I wanted to ask you, do you think you had an easier time going to these old Armenian sites further away from the border in terms of the gendarmes and government officials?
I mean, the only place you'd ever have an issue is, like I said, those couple that are kind of, for some reason, like. One of them is not even as close to the border as Ani is itself, like Marin, where they took me away. That's not even close like Ani is that like close, because Ani's right there. Yeah. This one is further away. So I don't know why they don't open that up to tourism, because it's a beautiful place, but I think it's the facts of the place.
Yeah, it's hard to explain.
I think it's the facts. I think the facts might scare them that it's 7th century, before Turks were even there.
What?
A long time before. Yeah, exactly. They'll probably call it Georgian Church or something else. Who knows?
Well, I wanted to ask that, like, were there ever any, like, signs on these monuments ever that you came across, wherever it was in Eastern Armenia, Western Armenia?
I did see one good thing, though. I remember going to Ani the first time in 26. I went 4 times in total. The first 3 times, there was this weird sign. Like, they'd mention Georgian, they'd mention, like, Turkish or Seljuk or this, that, and the other. They'd never mention Armenian.
Mm-hmm.
And the only Armenian mention they had was this random minaret in the middle of Ani that's like collapsed. And then they put down something in English saying, oh, there was an Armenian priest, he blew up this minaret. Which there's no evidence points to that at all. There's nothing. There's no evidence they can provide you to say that claim is true. But it's just, that's the only mention of the word Armenian in Ani, right? Was on that signboard. Terrorist, blew up minaret. But now when I went back last year, that sign doesn't exist anymore, which is great. But then again, the word Armenian doesn't exist still. Yeah, they just call it Bagratuni. Right. But I'm hopeful that the people that go there, not just to take those Instagram photos, the girls and the guys just standing there taking pictures, not knowing what the place is. I hope that they just Google Bagratuni.
I hope so too.
And then they read the article. I'm like, oh wow, shit, Armenians. Because obviously all the writing is in Armenian. I didn't see any Georgian writing. Yeah. Maybe only in there's a church they called the Georgian Church in Ani. Maybe there was something there, but it's only walls left.
Yeah.
Otherwise, everything that's there, even the Zakharid dynasty buildings, which were the Georgian Armenian joint dynasty, even those buildings are all in Armenian writing. Yeah.
No.
So, it's good that they've changed things there, but at the same time, they failed to mention the actual truth. But like I said, if people are impressed by the structures and the word Bagratuni is in their head, if they Google it, they'll learn about the place. But in other places, I haven't come across any misleading signs. I saw that in Van, there's some Armenian signs now.
All right.
When you go to Akhtamar, there's signs in Armenian. When you go to the place where they have those there's those cats, those with different...
The Van cat, yeah.
They call them the Van cat, which people keep telling me is a fake breed that someone just made up.
But you saw them?
I don't know if there's any truth to it.
Did you see them?
Yeah. I've been a couple of times. I've seen them, but the signs there are also in Armenian.
All right, well, that's good to know, too.
And I think there was 1 or 2 other signs I saw in Armenian as well, only in that area. So, but all in all, a lot of the ruins are just ruins. They're not signposted. They're just in the middle of a village or high up in like monasteries and mountains, far away from humans. Only the shepherds, the chobans, man. I always make friends with the chobans. They know
everywhere. Yeah, they're the landscapers.
Yeah. So I always tell them. When I was in Erzincan, I met a few, and I was like, "Hey, is there any more places up here?" He goes, "Yeah, you got to walk for 3 hours. There's a cave. There's all these things, carvings." I was like, I'll probably get killed out there. There's no point.
You need sheep to find it. you need to have a flock to go find it. Actually, the sheep know where it is. So
that's my advice. Like, always speak to chobans. Anywhere you go, they know everything. They've been everywhere. They know every nook and cranny of any place.
They know the land. That's their job. Also, Ani, Bagaran, Kilitashi, you've been all over.
Cars as well, man. You got to be in cars.
There's a big church there still intact.
That's the 10th century Kars Cathedral, they call it. It's just a church, though. It wasn't really a cathedral. But in and around Kars, you will see some remnants of the Armenian past. There's a second church on the foothills of the castle. A lot of people don't know about it. There's a cemetery that I would say rediscovered. Some people forgot about it. I posted about it. I don't know if you saw that. You go higher up, kind of in the hills opposite the castle. There's a kind of a flattened Armenian cemetery there. The locals have no idea.
Yeah.
I showed the locals like one image that I had of it that someone else went like 10 years before me. And they're like, I've never heard of any Armenian cemetery. There's not one here. I'm like, are you sure? So I kind of had an idea where it might be. So I spent like an hour just walking up and down, gallivanting these hills. I'm like, shit, I found it. And it was right there, still there. Yeah. Because it's away from people. No one goes up there to do any more damage than they already did in the past, so.
What would so I'm one of my favorite spots that I haven't been to, but I can't wait to visit is Surp Monastery in Mush region, because there's a great story about the pilgrimage that they would do there every year. There's a song they would sing. They would go and I have this whole like picture of my mind of what it was like back then. And Surp, for people that don't know, was like the Western Armenian version of Echmiadzin. It was a huge huge
literally
complex.
It was the number one,
Yeah,
right?
it was huge.
It was the number one,
At least in that part for sure. And so, but you saw the condition, and it's one of the sadder ones because there's really like barely anything left of this huge complex.
Yeah, I mean, they're so remote. Like that village didn't exist there. There was no village there.
Yeah.
Like it was so remote on a hill. That village, I think, only existed like in the 60s or something. Kurds moved to that area, settled it. But yeah, when I went there, there's literally only a chamber left, one chamber of the bigger monastery.
Yeah.
Inside, there's a few
Rocks.
columns with some decorations here and there. There's a few other kind of half-standing buildings here and there. But the rest of the remnants of the buildings have just been reused in the houses by the Kurds, basically.
Would you say that's one of the more like better conditioned ruins you saw, Surp, like compared to others, or is that average?
Like the one I told you in Kilatash, there's just nothing. It's just flattened. It's not even a stone left. This one, at least, like, okay, fine. There's like stones have been reused in the houses. You can still make them out. There's one chamber left.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's the worst, but it's definitely down there.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, because it's completely been decimated over the years. But then again, when I spoke to the locals, the Kurds, a lot of the old men were sitting outside the mosque. That's all they do there. It's a very boring life because it's a farming life.
Yeah.
All they do is after they've done their work, they just sit there in front of the mosque, drink chai, smoke, or whatever, just chill. We sat with them, talked to them. They didn't say one bad thing about Armenians. We told them, like, this is what the most important building. Like, yeah, when their grandparents came here, they said they settled the area. Mm-hmm. There was no materials to build houses. They said the Turkish government didn't provide anything for them to build anything. They had no choice in order to survive, to reuse the stones. Obviously, we know before that, in 1915, it was decimated then.
Yeah, there probably was a village there. It just disappeared, or they took those rocks or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, really, because from what they told us, they came in the 50s and 60s to that region. From nearby villages, they came up there to settle the land for graze, for agriculture or whatever. But I'm sure in the times the Armenians were there, they would have made a small community somewhere.
More populous. Mush was a very populated part, and Mush was actually one of those parts of Western Armenia that a lot of people didn't survive.
Well, even I went to Old Mush as well, by the way, as in the kind of remnants of Old Mush. Yeah, there's 2 churches there that I found, and remnants of Kachkars on a hillside opposite one of the churches.
It's outside of the city.
But again, they're not signboarded. They're just left there. But the funny thing is, the one of them is surrounded by kind of new housing. I don't know how long it's going to be there for, that church. The other one is kind of down in a valley. And in that valley where that church is, there was a sign in Turkish. It just said anyone caught like destroying anything in this building will face prosecution. Yeah. But it was an old sign, but it was there. Yeah. But obviously the place was already destroyed because people sit there and smoke and drink and hang out.
And so look, I mean, for a few things, like for me, like obviously the genocide is horrific, but like on top of it, it's this like erasure of like our memory there that like really eats at me too. And like, okay, how do we, what do we do to preserve like our last remnants of our history and our heritage there? I mean, that's why it's important for that society to come to terms with their past so that we can do whatever we can to at least put more signs and protect these areas. And it sounds like they're slowly doing that, whether it's like, not fully what would be nice, but like all these monuments need to be protected, and it's tough. We've already lost so much, and there's only a little bit left of all these places. Like I wanted
to tell you about some other churches that were impressive. I mean, to be fair, after a while, I was going village to village, looking at all the churches. My memory just started fading with names, and my mind started becoming numb. You keep going to places, you see the same thing.
Yeah,
like
it's a lot.
So I had to take, but certain ones stuck out to me. Like there was one called Saint Bartholomew Monastery. I don't know if you heard about it in Bashkale, Van region.
I've heard of it, but
it's from the 13th, 13th century. It's beautiful. It's like it's kind of on a little mound, and it's just a massive structure, just big, beautiful church. There's some sculptures on the front, I think, of a lion and some holy men. Inside is completely trashed, but the outside itself, you can still see the full-on structure, which is only maybe half of it. The rest, there was a whole kind of site around that area. And I was there, took the drone up, took some pictures. It was beautiful. And then some kid came up to me. It was quite funny. Kid came up to me, my mate, and he was like, "What are you guys doing? What are you guys doing here? This is the place of the kufar."
Yeah, the gabur.
So I started laughing at this kid. He's like a little 10-year-old. Yeah. And then I told my friend to say back to him in Turkish, go, "Look, we are kufars. That's why we're here."
Exactly.
Yeah. He was like, "Nah, I can't say that to this kid." We're like, "Oh, we're just documenting or whatever." But I think that the position where this church is the martyrdom site of Saint Bartholomew. Mm-hmm. And not far away, the Iranian border is there. And as you go deeper into that part of Iran, Saint Thaddeus,
which is one of the oldest churches, right, in the world or something like that.
Yeah. And these two guys, they were like bros, like Thaddeus and Bartholomew, spreading the word of...
They Christianized Armenia before it became officially its religion.
I mean, they tried to. Didn't they get killed by it? They got like burned alive or something, or they tried
upside down, skinned them, or something fun.
Flayed, I think is the old term. Flayed. I can't remember, I mean, they tried their best. It's like I think one of the saints even went to the Mongols. And he was just like stretched and quartered alive or something.
Yeah, I mean,
but that place, if you think about it, in the Armenian perspective, it should be one of the most, prestigious sites for pilgrimage, because it's one of the guys that was trying to bring it to the region before Gregory, right?
It's an apostle of Jesus.
Exactly.
It's huge, yeah. No, they would, and I'm sure it was a site of pilgrimage back in the day.
I think from what I read, it kind of people did come from far and wide to get to that part, basically.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Wikipedia right now. I see the structure as well. The main body's there, just not the roof.
The roof is gone, but there's some cross carvings, some carvings of different people. I think there's maybe a lion, someone killing a lion with a spear, from what I remember. And a few like that. And did I tell you about those Kachkars I saw in Erzincan? The biggest Kachkars ever, like massive ones, super tall ones. Yeah.
I've seen pictures where I've heard of them, and they look like.
I've seen people's. That is like a must see, man.
People next to it, and then you see how big it is, kind of thing, right? Is
it? Yeah, I'm just under 6 foot, and they are literally like 2.5 of me.
That's
cool. It's wild. But I think you've got replicas in Echmiadzin of those.
So I've seen the tall ones before somewhere. Maybe it was the replicas in Echmiadzin. I think there was maybe I've seen a photo of one of them in Julfa, Nakhichevan, and also in one of the churches in Armenia. I remember seeing something big, but it wasn't quite as big. But I mean, those things are huge. And I didn't know. I think I had known that there's these very infinite, these famous ones in Erzincan. Ridiculous.
Yeah, they're the ones, man. Like if anyone's in the region, you have to get there. There is a dodgy road that leads up there, but it's worth taking it. There's a monastery there, which is newer than the Kachkars. I think the Kachkars were dragged there from another site, from what I've heard. But the church is maybe from the 18th century or something. It's not that old. But then there's another chapel, and there's a third Kachkar on the floor next to the two standing.
Yeah.
But I think it wasn't as tall, but it's still there. You can read the text on it. It's all still there.
I'm reading here right now. No, never mind. I was gonna say that the Saint Bartholomew Church was mentioned in detail in this old Armenian book, but
in a manuscript or something, probably.
Yeah, novel Jalaleddin. It's by Rafi. He's a very famous writer. Yeah, which is interesting. So I'm sure. The
other church I want to tell you about was called Zarakar.
Zarakar, where's that one at?
It's kind of in the Kars region in this Kurdish village called Chukuraiva, I think it was called. Basically, it's Cappadocia, Armenian style. So there's a church built into the cave,
in the mountain
into
or
the
whatever,
cave.
yeah.
Yeah. Inside the mountains, there's like a big chapel area, some Armenian text on the wall, which I think they translated in 2012, and it's a prayer, someone giving, a shepherd giving to God or something in Armenian. And then I don't know if anyone listening has been to Cappadocia, but you've seen the crosses painted inside these cave churches. Literally, it's the same in this Armenian-style church. Yeah, very similar.
There's also in Vardzia in Georgia, in Javakh, where the Armenian populated area is, there is like this cliffside like little village town that they built. It's got a similar thing. But you know what's funny? I always think about the fact that the people who lived in Anatolia or wherever in Armenia and the Caucasus, that there were so many wars and invaders and like armies coming through and this and that the people literally had to go underground and like live like ants, you know, and build cities underground. I mean, that just goes to show how much of a crazy kind of place it was.
The funny thing was when I was at this Zarakar kind of cave church, this old Armenian one, we met this super nice Kurdish guy who literally, so what happened was we were trying to find it. It's hard to find it. It's like a needle in a haystack. Yeah. There's no road markings. It's not mapped. Only locals would know about it. So we get there. He's working on some kind of construction. And he's like, I think his name was Adel. He just jumped in with us. He's like, oh, well, I'll take you there. No problem. I'll show you around. Took us there, took us inside the building. This guy was like 50. Right? And he was leaping across, because to get inside is not easy. You got to climb up, got to jump across like a big gap. And if you slip, you're going to break an ankle. And this guy was leaping back and forth everywhere. And me and my mate were just like, Jesus, we're going to kill ourselves here. But it's worth it. And then he took us to the cemetery. There was a cemetery there. And he took us around, and we were looking around. There's just rocks everywhere. And I'm like, what kind of cemetery is this? It's just rocks. Then he's like, wait a minute, let me take you over here. He took us to this one particular rock. It took two of us to really, just me and this Adil, we flipped this rock over, and you can just make out a cross. So this was the old Armenian cemetery from the time of when this rock monastery cathedral was in use. Damn. And what happened was we flipped it, took pictures, he showed it us. I just walked away from it. Me and my friend just, oh, that's great. We walked away from it. And he's like, hey, wait, help me flip it back over. We don't want treasure hunters coming here.
There you go.
So I'm like, we didn't even think about that. I would have, if I found it, I would have flipped it and left it, not knowing that, okay, treasure hunters might see a cross and think, hey, let's dig here. As we flipped it, we flipped it back, hidden it again. It just looks like a regular rock now. Got me thinking that most of the rocks that look like regular rocks there probably have some kind of text or crosses on them. But what we found just around the corner were a bunch of bones scattered, a skull and everything. Damn. And I didn't think about reburying it. My friend didn't think about reburying it. I was in a Shakespeare Hamlet kind of moment. I held the skull in front of me thinking, Jesus, like, I've never really held like anything like this. Yeah. You know, this is crazy. Like, where did it come from? And we kind of found a pit there, and it was Adil's idea, this Kurdish guy who lives there. And I think the village is actually mostly Azeri and Kurdish mixed. Oh. Kind of a weird combination of the village. And he was like, we have to bury it. Yeah, it's disrespectful what people have done here. And he is the one leading the whole conversation. Me and my mate were like, shit, I would have just put it back on the floor. I didn't even think about reburying it, you know? So I jumped down. We just got our hands and knees dirty, just reburying all the bones and things that we found. And I was like, wow, like, didn't expect to hear it from this dude, you know? It was quite interesting.
That makes me cry. That's awesome.
And then the other church that I came across that I thought was super interesting is they call it Yanal Kilise. Mm-hmm. In Zoradir. Zoradir, I think, is the old name.
I'm looking it up.
But if you Google the Armenian name, the Turkish name, Yanal, Yanal Kilise.
I found it. Oh, wow.
So they say it's like, I think it dates back to before Akhtamar. Akhtamar, I think, is like 10th, 11th century. This is like from the 7th. And they say the guy who designed this one, the guy who designed, mine's slipping. The guy who designed Akhtamar took the, no, not the same guy, because it's like a few hundred years apart. Right. He took like kind of the blueprints and the way that this one was built to build Akhtamar, basically.
Damn.
So this one is quite interesting. And again, around the corner from this one, I found some Kachkars, beautiful big ones. They're in one of my posts. And it's used as a border fence to keep the goats in, basically.
Yeah.
They're kind of lined up along the floor, used as kind of a fence now. But the church itself is kind of not been messed with too much. The roof is still there. Some of the sides have kind of been broken, but it's kind of left as it is. But it's worth seeing if you're in the area.
No, I'm looking at it right now, and is it in Bashkala area?
Yeah. So if you get to Bartholomew Church, maybe another 15 minutes away, you'll come to this village.
Oh yeah, this
and again, the funny thing is, in between Yanal Kalise, this one, and in between Bartholomew, we stopped at some random village. There was another cave church there. This one in worse condition than the other one we saw, but you can still make out some crosses and the kind of Cappadocia vibe that was going on there. So it makes you wonder that at the time, like going back 1,000 years, at the zenith time of like when the Armenians were there, what did the place look like? Dude, what was going on there?
I do it all the time, and I mean, I can like. If I was like a local or a Turkish citizen who didn't know anything about the Armenians, or at least the genocide, the bad history, and you're seeing these thousands and thousands of like places and monuments and inscriptions, like it's almost like it's Elvish, like a civilization gone and like no one knows about, like it's a Mayan, whatever. I mean, it's fascinating. It's very like exciting, and it almost seems like you never find them all. Like there's always another one to find around the corner,
always. I had to kind of use process of elimination, so I mapped out like maybe 180 places. I only saw 50 of them, and I know there's way more too, but I had to kind of take the course of action where I look at a structure. Okay, is it me worth taking a picture of this? I look at another place, it's literally just a wall. Like, it's not worth me going there just to see a wall. There's nothing left there,
You have to prioritize whatever.
I try and go to the places where it's worth me documenting something. People can appreciate it more. Yeah. Even, you know what? In the north, just near Kars, there's a lake there. Childe Lake, I think it is. Yeah. So around that region, a lot of the people who live there are Azeris, but they're... I mean, you could call them Azeri, but they are Karapapak Turks, more or less Azeri, more or less Azeris. And in my time in Armenia, when I was in what's that Lake Arpi in the north, so those lake children and Arpi, the border is right there. It's not that far from each other, basically. So a lot of the people I met in around Childe Lake, they're like, "Oh, we are from a village called this," and it turns out it's kind of where Arpi is. And when I was in Arpi, I did come across a lot of sites there. Not like mosques or anything. I think there was one mosque was fairly new, 19th century in Armenia around that lake. A couple of maybe 6 old Muslim cemeteries that I came across, documented a few. But anyway, as I was in Childe, speaking to people there, these Azeris who are living there, there was some Armenian villages there as well. Went to a couple of the churches. One of the churches is a mosque now. They painted the church is not dead in a sense. They didn't destroy it. They just reutilized it, made it into a mosque. So me, as an outsider, obviously, someone who's Armenian could probably think that's not a good idea and have their points which are valid. Me, as an outsider, I'm thinking if they never made it into a mosque, they would have just destroyed it. Mm-hmm. To be fair. They would have reused the stones or did something with it. This particular one, they just left the outside as it is, added a minaret inside, repainted. Yeah, there was some text here and there that the guy who took us inside, he's like, we destroyed the text because in Islamic belief, they can't have like pictures. There was pictures too. They said they painted over it. Yeah, icons and whatever. Yeah. They said they just painted over it. So at the same time, you could see the big columns and the patterns within the columns as well. The structure was there. On the outside, funnily enough, there was some text you can kind of make out the top and some faces, maybe of angels, which they thought, okay, it's on the outside. We can't really get to it. They left it.
Was this the one where it was an Azeri man who took care of the church or something?
That was another village further north. This one was like this weird kind of other village we went to. That was another one. There was a Azeri guy there. I forgot his name now, man, but he was a nice chap. Yeah. Showed us around. He has the key, so he just opens up when people come and want to see it. And he makes sure no one messes with it. He took us to where the cemetery used to be, which is now a road. But he said that back when he was younger, you could see the stones here, but the government made a road through it. Nothing that the villagers could do at the time, but he had nothing but bad things to say, nothing bad to say about Armenians. When we told him, he was like, yep, 10th century. I think it's Dorayul, I think the village was called. Just came back to me. But he had nothing bad to say. And he didn't say anything. I told him that I was in Armenia, and I took pictures of Muslim cemeteries and whatever, and showed him. And he's, oh, wow, great. Nice to see some of them are still there and whatever. They had nothing bad to say, He was a cool guy.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm looking at Karapapaks right now too, and it looks like they were like a Turkic group that were like assimilated into Azeris or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think in modern times, the ones I know from, for example, I think none of these ones who lived in what is Armenia SSR at the time had ever been to Azerbaijan SSR. They've always just been there. So I think they migrated mostly to Georgia and Turkey when they left in the 80s, when the whole population exchange madness was going on, early 90s, late 80s. Some went left, some went up to Georgia. So
that would make
none
sense.
None of them had ever been to Azerbaijan. They just either went to Turkey or to Georgia.
Yeah, no, they're just Caucasian Turkey people. But no, I mean, for much of the history, whenever it was more of a pluralistic place, everyone just kind of like I have. Yeah,
everyone kind of got along.
I have this picture of like a historical Armenia, maybe 300 years ago, where there would be a Jewish village, a Greek village, a Turkic village, an Armenian village, a Syrian, all these different groups all living in the same area. Now, for me, who loves history and culture, it would be like the coolest thing to see, where you could go village to village and like get a little taste of a different culture and different customs, and it seems beautiful to me. So it's a shame,
It's a similar thing happened in Punjab. So my grandparents, both sets, they had to migrate as refugees or leave, basically. Exodus in 1947 when Pakistan was created. So they lost everything too. But the stories sometimes they should tell me were things like festivals, religious days. They learned about all different things together. I mean, Punjab itself is... majority of India, Punjab is Sikhs like me. Majority, obviously, of Pakistan, Punjab are Muslim. Hindus too. It was a whole vibrant mix of old Punjab, basically. Yeah. Like my granddad would go to the mosque, see his friends, do a prayer there. They would come see him at the temple, and all this cultural exchange was quite amazing.
It sounds
which is
awesome.
Lost since I don't know, both nations gained their independence. That region, you still see it in pockets, to be fair. When I go to India, Punjab, you still see in certain areas the mix is still there. The hatred has subsided, I would say. The hatred and whatever happened, the case is different. I mean, obviously in Armenia and that region is very different to kind of what happened in Punjab. Similar in some ways, but different.
I know what you mean.
In other ways. Yeah. Like we've kind of moved on. Like my grandparents moved on. They never told us about their pains, what they saw, what they left. They never told us anything much about it. In their minds, they just moved on and they just lived.
No, but
we forgot it.
No, but that's common. Those survivors of the Armenian genocide, that generation, they didn't talk about it at all with the following generation. Yeah. It was maybe like part of it. They were ashamed, they were humiliated. It was also obviously a very traumatic experience. They didn't talk about it. It wasn't until the next few generations started being like, no, that was super messed up. We need justice. We need to do something about it. So before we end, I did want to ask you, because you were telling me over the phone earlier that you might be moving to Martin again, right? Or not again,
possibly in a couple of months. Yeah.
It's because was it one of your like favorite places you visited? Would you say?
I think in the whole of Turkey, if I could move somewhere, that's the only place I'd probably move.
Beautiful.
Just a magical place. I mean, there's a small Armenian community there as well. Mm-hmm. A couple of families. There's I think 2 churches there in the center.
And Syriacs?
I've been inside them. There's a couple of obviously Syriac churches as well. I think it was more of a heavy Syriac area, but there obviously were Armenians there too. And I mean, the best buildings in the town were built by an Armenian craftsman called Sarkis Elias Lole.
Lole, yeah. I remember seeing those photos on your Instagram, and the detail was amazing. Like those buildings were beautiful, and like that alone was like, damn. I mean, what imagine if the whole town looked like that, and maybe it does. I haven't obviously.
Yeah. No, it used to. It used to. Like literally, it was like a beautiful picture on a postcard. But now, in the last like 20, 30 years, people are just building horrible buildings on top of their nice old gold rock kind of buildings, and it's a mishmash of things. In certain sections, you get that old magic. But then in certain areas, people have kind of redeveloped and kind of ruined the area.
So when you go to Martin, your plan is to continue this kind of like travel around the country.
I mean, I still work, so on my days off, I'll have time to explore as much as I can.
Obviously, you like it, and it's a lot of fun, and I mean, I'm very jealous.
Yeah, I mean, in overall, a lot of people, Armenians, have come to me. Is it safe to go to Turkey? Can I go? Should I go? As I tell all my friends, like my parents are from like India, for example, right? And my friends, they would say to me, like friends who are girls, "Oh, is it safe? Should I go India?" And most of the time in the Punjab, it's very safe. Like there's nothing bad will happen to you, but just generally, I always say, look, if you're a female solo traveler or something,
in general,
it's just better. It's just anywhere. Even if you come to my hometown in Leicester.
That's why I tell people, like in America, you still can't. Wherever.
Yeah, sometimes people can be a bit weird. That's why in the trips I took in Turkey, for example, a lot of these people were asking me, can I go if I'm a female by myself? And I was like, you know what? It's always better if you're in a group anyway.
Yeah.
Take a bunch of your friends with you, just go together for like 10 days, zigzag across different cities, see your heritage.
Someone who speaks the language, ideally, right?
Yeah, that too. Yeah. Which you can find in a lot of these places. For example, in Van and a lot of these places, I met these people who identify themselves as Kurdish, but they also said that they're Armenian too. Because someone like their grandmother or someone who've kind of stamped their mark on them. So they haven't grown up thinking I'm 100% Kurdish. They're like, okay, I'm Armenian too. A couple of them, they're doing some good stuff in Van. Like one of them made a documentary discovering places and doing all kinds of stuff, So
that makes me happy.
I would say it's safe, man. Go with your friends, go in a group, meet some locals who speak the language, who want to show you places. Yeah. Shouldn't be an issue. Yeah. Well, and of course, like every place, you're going to meet. You can't swear on the podcast, I'm guessing, no?
Go for it.
I'm going to say, as I tell my friends, every country has its group of dickheads. Even Armenia. I've met them in Armenia. I've been detained there.
Gonna give you a hard
like
time.
4 times there, I've been given hard times. Yeah. So, but I've met so many nice people. So it's again with every country, you're going to meet some bad apples, but there's plenty of good ones out there.
No, that's good to hear, and I have to say, like, I have a lot of friends who have done the trip. I mean, granted, they've gone with a big group and with people that know what they're doing, but but in Armenia, you'll even see like Western Armenia travel vans, where you if you're
I've seen a couple of agencies. Yeah, they're pretty good.
And they take what is that? They go up
through
Georgia.
They take you to the main places. Yeah,
but they go up through Georgia and then down.
Yeah. I've done that a few times. I went to I was in Trabzon all the way across to Batumi as a hopper, Batumi, and then even in my time in Hopper and Shamli Hemshin, I met the Hemshins. With a group of Armenians. Met a bunch of them up there. Stayed in the mountains like 5 days. It's quite interesting.
So the Hemshins, for the listeners, are Muslim Armenians, that kind of survived over the centuries. I think they converted to Islam a few centuries ago. But
so there's awesome. Many of them. One of my friends, Errol Amadouni, is a Hamshin. But he's been to Armenia many times. He's learned about his Armenianness, and he does many posts in Turkish and in English about it. No. I don't know if you heard of him.
No, you gotta share. You gotta share his
account. I'll share it. He's done many videos. He's done many documentation of his family and everyone.
Maybe I've seen his stuff on YouTube. Actually,
maybe you've seen his stuff.
I know what it is, but that's good to hear. And I definitely plan on traveling out there and seeing your photographies. Like, I don't know if it's added more inspiration to go, but at least it was nice to see. Okay, this is what's there right now. And again, I have to say, since you're non-Armenian, like it also makes me happy. Like, look, it's someone else is also interested in this stuff. Someone else can appreciate this stuff almost subjectively, right? Like, there's no personal bias.
I'm not. Yeah, there's no personal.
It's
like I don't know, like
beautiful
vendetta
stuff
for me.
Yeah, it's
I'm just an open person, just learning as I go along. I mean, all I've kind of photographed is like 10%. There's so many I've got pinned on my map I didn't even have time to see. Many of them are just up a hill, far away, like 3 hours hiking to get to certain monasteries and places. So a lot of them I've only seen 10%. So literally, if you think I've got a lot, that's only 10%. There's so much more out there.
Dude, that's awesome. And so I hope...
The other thing I wanted to say was like another reason as I found out more about the Armenians and what they've been through. As I was in Gaziantep, as I was telling you before, it was even like my people, the Punjabis, like being a Sikh, going through our history. We've had genocides against us in like the 17th century. People trying to wipe us out. At one point, we didn't exist.
Yeah.
But as I tell my Armenian friends, I'm here, you're here.
Yeah. It's
so because when they sometimes my friends feel bad about certain things, they see something and they're like, oh man, I feel bad about this, we used to live there and what. I'm like, look, you're alive, I'm alive, man, let's fucking celebrate that, like come on,
let's celebrate. And there's hope, right? There's hope.
Exactly, there's always hope.
You gotta have hope.
Slowly things, I mean, the thing with Turkey from what I've learned is the government probably no hope, but the people on the grounds, the people I've met in the villages, the nice peoples in the cities, they are cool. They want to learn. They want to know more about things that are happening. And when I tell them this was an Armenian church, they want to hear about it. Like, oh, tell us more about it. What is this place?
Well, that gives me a lot of hope. And if there's anyone listening who is interested in G's work, you can look up Avara the Wanderer on Instagram and on Twitter, right? And if anyone has any ideas to collaborate and showcase his work, I'm sure he'd love to work with all of us. So. Well, man,
it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, man. This was awesome, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of your footage and your photography, and we're definitely going to share it with our listeners. So thank you, man.
Yeah, that's cool, man. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me on. It's my first kind of, I don't know, podcast.
Yeah, man.
Is it a podcast?
Yeah, it's a podcast, and the center of attention is all on you.
I don't even know the terms, man. Come on, I don't even know it's called a podcast. I thought it was like a video cast that we're doing or something. I had no idea what it was exactly.
Yeah, man. No,
who knows?
awesome.
Maybe if you do another one in the future, I'll have to search my memory banks. I have thousands of stories which have just fell out of my head as I started this. But they'll slowly come back to me, and I'll tell you another time.
That's the thing, man. We could probably talk for a very long time. So
I guess I have a kind of a speech before I leave, I guess, is to say that hopefully in the future Armenians will be easily able to go into Turkey and visit their heritage sites. And to anyone listening, you should go and see where your ancestors came from and what's out there. At times it will be sad, but at the same time, I think you will, I don't know, you'll pass a kind of a milestone in your life. Something maybe will change inside you. Maybe you want to do better with what you have.
And
today,
and have some closure and some
closure as well.
Whatever it is, that's how I see it too, and that's why I'm looking forward. I'm definitely gonna cry a bunch, but I'm definitely gonna. It's not. I can already tell. That's why I'm like waiting on it. I'm like, it's gonna be so powerful of an experience that.
But no one in the villages ever said anything like weird to us. They just came out. And they were like, oh, who are these guys taking pictures, And they just had positive things to say. But I hope in the future things change for the better. And these ones kind of stuck in limbo on the border on both sides. I hope that they get open, because a lot of my Armenian friends don't even know about those three on the Armenian border.
Yeah.
That are just stuck in limbo, and you need special access to view them, which you shouldn't. You should be able to walk right up to them.
Yeah.
They're on Armenian soil. They belong to your people. You should go up to see them, not have Russian soldiers tell you no.
Yeah.
You can't see them. It's crazy.
I didn't even know that. So, but thanks again, G, and this was awesome.
No problem,
best
mate.
of luck, and
Yes.
we'll talk soon.
All right, mate. Cheers.
You are listening to Hajduk Talks, the official podcast of the AYF West. I'm Haik Minasyan, and we're just a couple of Armenians talking in the world.
A couple of Armenians talking in the world.